Well, happy Saturday, January 3rd, 2026, or Alaska Day, or Seward's Folly Day. I'm not going to lie to you. It is still bitterly cold. It's about 42 below outside. Unfortunately, for about the past 3 weeks, I don't think it's got above 20 below. Uh, it's brutal. But there's a moose roast in the crock pot, and you might be able to hear the dishwasher running in the background. But anyway, so I did a little research, and I want to share some facts about Seward's Folly. So I'm going to read you a quote. It's from Robert Service. It's technically about the Yukon, but kind of fits Alaska. There's a land, oh, it beckons and beckons, and I want to go back, and I will. Robert W. Service, The Spell of the Yukon, and other verses. So, on this date, January 3rd, Seward's Folly became the 49th state 66 years ago today. In 1867, the United States purchased Alaska from Russia for $7.2 million, a transaction that added approximately 586,000 square miles to U.S. territory, and was orchestrated by Secretary of State William H. Seward, referred to by critics as Seward's Folly because they saw the region as a frozen wasteland with little value. Despite initial skepticism, the cost of just over one, less than 1 cent, or less than 2 cents an acre, it was actually 1.8 cents per acre. Alaska's vast natural resources included gold, oil, and fisheries, and it soon proved its worth. It remained a U.S. territory for more than 90 years. It was first governed as a district, then a territory beginning in 1912, and the movement for statehood gained momentum after World War II, propelled by the region's strategic importance and the desire for greater representation and local control. And I do remember my Air Force career, General Billy Williams saying the country that controlled Alaska controlled the Northern Hemisphere. Um, the history of Russia and Alaska is deeply intertwined. Russia had control of a large landmass dates back to the 18th century, when Russian explorers and trading posts were established along the Alaskan coast, primarily focusing on fur trading and especially the sea otter pelts. This period saw the formation of the Russian American Company, which managed Russian interests and settlements in Alaska. Russia owned Alaska for over 125 years. When they negotiated the sale of Alaska, it was really driven by several factors. They were financially strained after the Crimean War, found it difficult to defend the remote territory. Additionally, they feared losing Alaska without compensation in future conflicts, especially to the British, who controlled neighboring Canada. Selling Alaska to the U.S. offered Russia a way to strengthen ties with America and gain much needed funds while removing a distant, costly outpost. Today, the Russian influence remains visible in Alaska's cultural heritage, our architecture and places and names, reflecting the region's unique historical connection to Russia. So the Statehood Act was a legislative act introduced by Bob Bartlett and signed by President Dwight D. Eisenhower on July 7, 1958. Through it, Alaska became the 49th U.S. state on January 3, 1959. The law was the culmination of a multiple decade effort by many prominent Alaskans, including Bartlett, Ernest Gruning, Bill Egan, Bob Atwood, and future Senator Ted Stevens. The law was at first introduced by James Wickersham in 1916. However, due to the lack of interest from Alaskans, the bill was never introduced. Efforts increased in 1943, reintroduced in 1947 and 50 with the backing of President Harry Truman. But due to opposition from powerful Southern congressmen, it took until 1958 to pass the law. Gruning worked on rallying support from Alaskans, launching the Alaska Constitutional Convention in 1956. Stevens worked on masterminding the executive branch's attack, using his powerful executive office as a solicitor in the Department of the Interior. From 1867 to 1884, Alaska was considered to be a military district of the United States and under the control of the federal government, known as the Department of Alaska. It was later organized as the District of Alaska and then was organized again into the Incorporated Territory of Alaska. Alaskans had sought statehood since as early as the 1920s, though this vision was not realized until the decade after World War II. In 1884, the Department of Alaska was organized into the District of Alaska when Congress passed the Organic Act allowing Alaska to become a judicial district, with judges, clerks, marshals, and limited government officials appointed by the federal government to run the territory. During the 1896-1910 gold rush eras, hundreds of thousands of people traveled to Alaska in search of gold. Several industries flourished, such as fishing, trapping, mining, and mineral production. However, Alaska was still considered a district, and local government often had little control over local affairs. Several issues arose that made it more difficult for Alaska to push towards self-government. One of those was the formation of the Alaska Syndicate. Two industry barons, J.P. Morgan and Simon Guggenheim, they controlled the Kennecott copper mine, steamships, and railroad companies, and salmon packing. The syndicate opposed any further movement towards Alaska's home rule. James Wickersham grew increasingly concerned over the exploitation of Alaska for personal and corporate interests and took it upon himself to fight for Alaskan self-rule. In August of 1912, Congress passed the Second Organic Act, which established the territory of Alaska with a capital in Juneau and an elected legislature. The federal government still retained much of the control over laws regarding fishing, gaming, and natural resources, and the governor was also still appointed by the president. During the Great Depression, President Franklin Roosevelt did two significant things for Alaska. First, he allowed for 1,000 selected farmers hurt by the Depression to move to Alaska and colonize the Matanuska-Sitna Valley, or Mat-Su Valley, being given a second chance at agricultural success. Second, and sometimes considered even more importantly, Roosevelt appointed Ernest Gruning as governor of Alaska in 1939. Alaska's desire for statehood was much aided by the amount of attention it received during World War II. After Japan initiated the Aleutian Island campaign and actually occupied American soil in June of 1942, the territory became an important strategic military base and a key to the Pacific during the war, with the resulting population increase due to the number of American servicemen sent here. It remained critically important during the Cold War, deterring Soviet aggression through the Bering Strait. However, many barriers still stood between Alaska and statehood. Many Alaskans did not want themselves or their businesses to be hurt financially by taxes that would result from statehood. Other Alaskans feared that statehood would result in a flood of people coming to Alaska. There was enough of a majority, though, that did want statehood so as to be able to pass a referendum for statehood in Alaska in 1946 by a 3-2 vote. With the help of the referendum, Bartlett was able to introduce a bill to Congress. The bill was, however, immediately shot down by a coalition of Democrats and Republicans. Republicans feared that Alaska would be unable to raise enough taxes due to its small population, end up as a welfare state, while Southern Democrats feared more pro-civil rights congressmen in retaliation. In retaliation, Gruning established the Alaska Statehood Committee in 1949. He encouraged journalists, newspaper editors, politicians, and members of national and labor organizations to help use their position of power to make the issue of Alaska statehood more known. He gathered a group of 100 prominent figures, including Eleanor Roosevelt and actor James Cagney, who all stood for the Alaska cause. In 1954 State of the Union address, Eisenhower referred to statehood for Hawaii, but not Alaska. By March, frustrated by Eisenhower's refusal to support statehood for Alaska, a Senate coalition led by Democrats tied the fates of Alaska and Hawaii statehood together as one package. 6 members of the Senate Interior and Insular Affairs Committee, including Senator Butler, came up here to Alaska in order to hold public hearings and see for themselves what the public sentiment was in Alaska. In response to this visit, Alaskans would not let Americans forget the cause. Citizens sent Christmas cards reading, "Make Alaska's future bright. Ask your senator for statehood and start the new year right." Women made bouquets of Alaska's flower, the forget-me-not, and sent them to members of Congress. Movements such as Operation Statehood also put increasing pressure on Congress. Lack of public interest could no longer be used as a feasible excuse to prevent statehood. In 1954, Territorial Governor B. Frank Henselman proposed that Alaska be divided at the 150 meridian west, but many Alaskans opposed that legislation. It would split the state of Alaska in half. In interest of the growing fervor and enthusiasm towards the cause, a constitutional convention was held at the University of Alaska Fairbanks in 1955. During this convention, Grunig gave a very powerful speech which compared Alaska's situation to the American struggle for independence. The famous speech was entitled, "Let Us End American Colonialism," and had a very influential impact. Another step forward for the cause was taken by the Alaskan adoption of the Tennessee Plan, which allowed them to elect their delegates to Congress without having to wait for an official act from Congress. Alaskans therefore elected to Congress Senators Ernest Gruning and William Egan, and represented to the House Ralph Rivers. Gruning, Egan, and Rivers attended Congress and were politely received, though they were not officially seated or recognized in any way. The Alaskan delegation did not give up, however, and worked hard with Bartlett to pressure Congress into action. Eventually, with the help of Bartlett's influence, the Speaker of the House, Sam Rayburn, who until 1957 had been an ardent opponent of the Alaska statehood cause, he changed his mind when Congress reconvened in January of 1958. President Eisenhower fully endorsed the bill for the first time. Senator Lyndon B. Johnson promised his commitment to the bill, but others still stood in the way, such as Representative Howard Smith of Virginia and Thomas Pelly of Washington State, who wanted the Alaskan waters to be open to use by the Washingtonians. Debate lasted for hours within both chambers, though eventually the resistance was able to be bypassed, and the House passed the statehood bill by a vote of 210 to 166. The Senate, which had its own version of the bill as well as the House version, finally managed to pass the House's bill through the fervent urging of Bartlett by a 64-20 vote. On January 3rd, 1959, after much struggle and through the efforts of many, Alaska finally became the 49th state of the United States of America after President Eisenhower signed the official declaration. So on January 3rd, 1959, Alaska was officially admitted as the 49th state of the United States. This milestone marked the culmination of years of advocacy by Alaska residents and leaders, transforming the region into a vital part of the nation's economic and strategic landscape. And as Robert Service said in his spell of the Yukon, there's a land. Oh, it beckons and beckons, and I want to go back, and I will. As always, love you. Hugs and prayers.